good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela Franco, and today I'm going to tell you about a front-end framework alternative called Svelte. But before I begin, I would like to thank SingleSprout for sponsoring this talk. So let's dive deep into Svelte. Sorry, let's dive into Svelte. So our roadmap for today, I'm going to tell you what is Svelte. We're going to look at some Svelte rankings. I'll explain how Svelte works under the hood, how it manages the state. We'll look into other popular features of Svelte. We will finally look at who's using Svelte, and then I will leave you with some resources to get you started using Svelte in your applications. So what is Svelte? So Svelte is an alternative to front-end frameworks like React, Vue, and Angular. So according to Svelte's website, Svelte is a radical new approach to building user interfaces. Rich Harris, Svelte's creator, promises that you will write less code, won't be using the virtual DOM, and will achieve code that is truly reactive. We're going to expand on these three main ideas, but first, let's look at some Svelte rankings. We're going to look at the state of JavaScript, a survey of about 20,000 developers. To see what they think about Svelte. So we're first going to look at satisfaction. So as we can see here in the yellow, Svelte satisfaction for 2019 was 88%, just right below React. And then for 2020, we see that it was at 89%, setting itself on top of React, Vue, Angular, and all the other popular frameworks. We are now going to look at interest. So for interest, Svelte is at 66% right now for 2020. Again, higher than all other frameworks in the survey. Now, regarding usage, we can see here that usage right now, it's low at 15%. This is mainly due to the fact that Svelte is relatively new. But it is important to note that there was a big jump from 2019 to 2020, from 8% to 15%. So I'm very excited to see what this ranking is going to be for this year. And finally, we'll look at awareness. So awareness is at 86% right now. So there is still room to grow. And again, because it's so new, but again, big jump from 2019 to 2020, from 75% to 86%. So now let's talk about what is it that makes Svelte so popular. And we're going to see how Svelte works under the hood. So first of all, Svelte is actually a compiler, not a framework or library. So Svelte compiles code into JavaScript at build time, not runtime, which means you will not have any runtime dependencies, only dev dependencies. Also, as opposed to React, which uses a virtual DOM, Svelte interacts directly with the real DOM. By doing so, you ensure that the browser does as little work as possible, which makes your web app faster and your code simpler. So we're going to look at this behind-the-scenes comparison between React and Svelte. We'll start with React on the right. As you can see here, with React, you build your components. The compiled code runs in the browser JavaScript engine, monitoring changes to the virtual DOM, then comparing the previous DOM with the updated virtual DOM, and finally, using a reconciliation algorithm to update the browser DOM. Now, if we look at Svelte on the left, with Svelte, you build your components, Svelte compiles your code into ideal JavaScript that surgically updates the DOM. So this results, of course, in code that is much faster and smaller, as we can see on these metrics. So in a comparison of running a real-world application using different frameworks, Svelte's performance ranked very high at 99 points. And as you can see here, all other popular frameworks were significantly lower. Also, the size of the compiled JavaScript file was significantly small. And if you're interested in seeing more of these metrics and learning how these metrics are gathered, I am linking the article to this slide. Now, let's look closely at a Svelte component to see and to learn more. So a Svelte component, as you can see here, has a file extension of that Svelte, but it sits on top of HTML. So a Svelte component has generally 3 parts: a script tag, and this is where all the logic is going to happen. This is where you can import stuff, declare your functions, declare your props. There's also going to be a style tag, which is optional, and the rest is just HTML. Now, the cool thing here is that we can add JavaScript to our HTML instead of adding HTML to our JavaScript. As you can see here on this name variable that we have declared at the top, it becomes the part of the state of our application. And if I were to change the value of name, then the state of our application will update. Now, this Svelte components allow HTML to be dynamic, to have logic and iteration. So as we can see on this example on the left, we have a paragraph tag. We're adding conditional statements by using this mustache-like syntax to wrap it into. And on the right, we're going to see an example of iteration using each. And so we can see how we can iterate over this list items in the shopping list. Now let's talk about styling. So in the style tag in this component, we have locally scoped styling. That means it's not going to affect any other component in your application, just the component the style tag is in. However, if you do want to make it global, you have that option to do so, but it's locally scoped by default. And now let's talk about state management. So in Svelte, you do not have any state management libraries like Redux. Svelte actually contains its own minimalistic state management solution. So we already saw how we can manage a state within a component by just using variables. And now we can also talk about how we can share state between components, either passing down props from parent to child like we do with other frameworks, or you can also use a Svelte store. So let's look at stores. There are a couple of store types in Svelte. So you can use either a writable store or a readable store. The writable store, any store, is actually in a JavaScript file that your component will import. Now, a writable store has 3 methods. You have the set method that sets the state of a value in your component. You have a update method that runs a callback that takes in a value and returns the updated value. And you also have a subscribe method, so your components can watch for changes to the values that you set in your store. And again, there are readable stores. These cannot be updated from external components. These are going to be read-only stores. And now let's look at some other popular features of Svelte that I thought they were pretty cool. So the first one is reactive declarations. So as you can see here in the code below, we are using this label statement, which is the $ with the column, to make the double variable truly reactive. So if I were to change the value of count to, let's say, 10, the value of double will be updated to 20 accordingly. And some developers like to call this magic syntax. So these reactive values become particularly valuable when you need to reference them multiple times, or if you have values that depend on other reactive values. And these reactive declarations are not limited to values. You can actually use them with arbitrary statements, as you can see in this if block below. Moving on to two-way data flow. This one's really cool too. So we know that data can usually flow from parent to child. But if you want to break that rule, we have the bind directive. And with the bind directive in this example, the text area, when the value of the text area changes, the name of the input will change as well. But there's a lot more to this bind directive, so I would recommend checking out the docs to learn more. And we also have another really cool feature here. Svelte has built-in transitions. So using transitions is really easy with the transitions directive. These transitions are functions that take in parameters of elements that you want to change in your transitions. For example, the coordinates or the transition times, the speed. And you have different transitions in Svelte. For example, fade or fly, but you could also create your own to fit the needs of your project. Finally, a couple more important features: accessibility. So Svelte alerts us if markup is inaccessible. For example, if you leave the alt attribute out of an image tag, you will actually get a warning in your terminal to fix that. And finally, TypeScript support. So this was very popular. People were asking for this. And so this came in with the latest version of Svelte. So Svelte now supports TypeScript support. And as you can see, Svelte is still growing and is still in development. So it's actually open source. So if you do want to contribute, please do so. And who's using Svelte? So here's a list of companies that are currently using this tool. And that concludes my presentation. I'll leave you here with some resources to get you started using Svelte. And thank you for being here. We'll open the floor for questions.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much, Angela. This has been a super informative talk. I just wanted to ask, are frameworks like Next.js supported by Svelte? And if not, are there similar alternatives for like server-side rendering, for instance?
Thank you, Roble. Yeah, that is very important. So Next.js is actually a framework for React, but if you're looking for a Svelte alternative, you should look into Sapper, and then also SvelteKit, which is going to replace Sapper whenever it's ready. And you will definitely get server-side rendering options and also page routing, code splitting, and more. Thank you for your question.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, looks like Nyan has a question as well.
Yeah, Angela, great presentation. Really enjoyed it. I'm definitely always trying to learn about a new front end. Well, not new, like just front end technology. I was wondering what resources or tutorials you can provide for me to like learn more about Svelte.
Oh yeah, very cool. Thank you so much for your question. I do get this question a lot. So I will definitely start, let me go back one slide. I will definitely start with the Rethinking Reactivity talk by Chris Harris, which is Svelte's creator, just to get inspired. That is an amazing talk. Again, Rethinking Reactivity. And then I will go to the Svelte docs because they have this awesome tutorial that is a self-guided tutorial. You don't have to listen to anyone just doing things, and then you're just watching. Like, this is actually an interactive self-guided tutorial. It's not opening, but it will in just a second. And yeah, this is amazing. And then it's really easy to do, and it won't take you longer than maybe a weekend to get started with Svelte, like know everything you need to know. And the next thing I would recommend is I have linked here some Svelte Society or Svelte community resources like the Svelte Society website or the Svelte Discord channel. So I definitely recommend just connecting with any Svelte developers to find out how they learn about it. Thank you for your question, Ian.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, it looks like we have 4 other hands. So Ken, your hand is up.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, great talk, Angela. Really appreciate the stats on the performance and the size of files that your Svelte compiles. I was curious if you could talk about if you have any recommendations for testing and module bundling. Like I'm used to using Webpack and Enzyme. Are there any equivalents for Svelte?
Yeah, so really good question, Ken. Thank you so much. So Svelte actually can be used with Webpack. So if that's what you want to use, it's actually an option. When you look at the started template for Svelte, they actually use another module bundler called Rollup. So you can check that one out as well. It's actually made by the same creator as Svelte. And then regarding testing, so Test and Svelte actually run with Jest, and there is a Svelte library for that. So I believe I have linked the Svelte library to the resources as well. Yes, the Svelte testing library. So yeah. Oh, and also parcel for model bundle. I just remember that. Thank you for your question,
Well,
Ken.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have the last 3 questions. Will, your hand is up.
Angela, thank you
Hey.
for the talk. I was really curious about Svelte. And I saw in your presentation that it seems to be gaining popularity a lot. Is there any feature in particular that developers find really valuable in Svelte that maybe they don't find in the other frameworks?
Yeah, I think the most important one that I ran into is just how easy it is to learn for like new developers, but also how easy it is to migrate from an existing app to Svelte. And the reason why people might want to migrate or might want to learn this is because it's just so fast, you know. So like because it's not using the virtual DOM, it's just compiling everything at build time. So just performance is going to be the main thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your question.
All right, actually, so we have our last question will be from Tash.
Hey, Angela, this is pretty interesting because I was not expecting Svelte to be faster than React and Rust and WebAssembly. My question is, when say like a DOM element changes, does Svelte re-render the entire DOM, or it like, because React uses the diffing algorithm, right? Does Svelte only re-render the component that's been updated, or does it re-render the entire DOM?
Correct. So I'm sorry. Yes, it renders the component. So remember when we talked about everything is set on top of HTML, and you can add JavaScript to your HTML. So that's how you change state. And simply when you re-render, is just going to be that component that changes your state. So that's one of the reasons why it's really fast.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your question.
All right, well, thank you all so much for those great questions. Thank you again, Angela, for your wonderful Tech Talk. That will include our Tech Talk for today. Thank you everyone for joining us for the series, and enjoy your evening. Goodbye.